For the last 6.5 decades, the Toyota Land Cruiser has built a reputation for itself for being a Japanese-American icon vehicle, especially known for its dependability and capability. Now, when Toyota discontinued the Land Cruiser back in 2021, a lot of enthusiasts mourned its loss. However, after a 3-year hiatus, the Land Cruiser is back, and as you can see, it's back with a vengeance. And today we're actually out here at the iconic Land Cruiser Heritage Museum because we finally get to see the all-new Land Cruiser in the sheet metal. Now that we finally have this vehicle in person, let's go ahead and finally take a first look. So with the return of such an iconic vehicle, I'm going to talk about the styling a little bit later in the video. I want to first show you guys what's underneath the hood. Now, Toyota is going to offer the Land Cruiser in 3 trims in the US. This is the mid Land Cruiser trim. All of them will come standard with a hybridized powertrain. If you guys are familiar with our first look video on the new Tacoma, this is going to have the same powertrain. It's a 2.4 liter gasoline direct injection turbocharged 4-cylinder that is paired up with an electric motor that is sandwiched between the 8-speed automatic and the 2.4 liter turbo. Toyota didn't provide any kind of power figures of the gas engine on its own, but when you combine the outputs, Toyota says you get 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. Those are the same numbers, of course, that we saw under the hood of the new Tacoma TRD Pro. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Remember, this is an 8-speed auto. It doesn't use a CVT or the 10-speed that you find in some of the other Toyota hybrid vehicles. Toyota hasn't announced final fuel economy figures yet, but they did say this model here will tow up to 6,000 pounds. So not quite as much as the old Land Cruiser, but we'll talk about that later on when we get to the styling. This is technically a smaller vehicle. It's been slotted down a class in terms of the overall size. Now, it does have a 1.87 kilowatt hour nickel metal hydride battery. So this is a full hybrid vehicle. So it can run on electric power alone at low speeds, but it's not a plug-in hybrid. And for now, this is the only vehicle at launch. Toyota has not announced any kind of fuel economy, like I said, or the curb weight, but I imagine this vehicle is probably going to come in around the 5,000 pound mark. Now, when we go ahead and close up the hood, which as you can see, it's held up by a prop rod, the styling of this vehicle, how can we not talk about it? I mean, first of all, Toyota is actually going to offer 2 different front fascias on the Land Cruiser. This one here is the mid-trim, which is known as the Land Cruiser. We're also going to show you guys the Land Cruiser 1958, which is the base model. There's also a Land Cruiser First Edition that combines styling elements of the base with the upper level features of this trim, but Toyota sadly doesn't have that vehicle here for us to see. Now, you can see the front end of this vehicle has a lot of heritage design cues. I especially love the fact that we have the heritage Toyota grille where it's spelled out boldly. This model here has the rectangular square headlights. As you guys know, over the years, over the 6.5 decades, Toyota offered the Land Cruiser in round headlight configuration with the square headlights. You can see it's a full LED headlight with an LED daytime running light, LED turn signal. I also love the JDM style yellow fog lights on this model. I think it looks fantastic. You can see the grille also has these kind of square air intakes. You need the cooling, of course, for that hybridized powertrain. And then you can also see it's an off-road vehicle, so it has a lot of good approach angles, which we'll talk about later on. This vehicle, Toyota says, has 8.7 inches of running ground clearance. Now that number seems a little bit low, especially if you're comparing it to like Jeeps and Broncos and whatnot, where they have over 10, 11 inches of ground clearance, but Toyota again says that this vehicle's capability is going to live up to its lofty nameplate. Of course, you're going to get skid plates and whatnot, and this vehicle is going to be built off of the same architecture as the Lexus GX 550 that we just saw, but as you guys also saw, it has a different powertrain underneath the hood. Toyota says internally this is known as the Land Cruiser 250 series, because as you guys know, there's a 300 series in other markets that's been redesigned. This is going to kind of slot in between because it's not quite as big or as luxurious as that 300 series. Now, moving around the side profile, Toyota actually says that they made this model here narrower and shorter. It's about 4.4 inches shorter versus the old 200 series Land Cruiser, which is the last one we saw back in 2021. So at 73.2 inches wide, it's going to be a lot easier to squeeze this vehicle through those narrow trails. It has the same 112.2 inch long wheelbase. That number has been on a Land Cruiser for years. Toyota just thinks it's the perfect size for a wheelbase. Its overall length is 193.7 inches long. So again, it's around 3 inches shorter than the previous generation. It's going to give it a little bit more of a tidy dimension, but what I love about this vehicle is the boxy look, especially when you combine it with the 2-tone roof. This model here is called Heritage Blue. That's the exterior color. It's available on the mid-trim level Land Cruiser and the First Edition. Again, we'll hop out and show you guys the 1958 later on. But you can see the wheels. These are an 18-inch wheel that you can get. Toyota says they will offer, I believe, a 20-inch wheel as well. This is the 18 running on a 265/70 R18 tire. It's got a Michelin LTX trail tire, so it's an SUV tire, but I suspect some of you may want to swap these out with some all-terrain tires. This vehicle does have an independent front suspension. It doesn't have air suspension, but like I said earlier, it has around 8.7 inches of ground clearance. Now moving around the rest of the side, let's talk about the side mirrors. You can see it has an integrated turn signal. It's black painted. I love the two-tone look. This is a really early pre-production car, so keep in mind some things may change. Again, I kind of love the fact that you have this like robin eggs blue. They call it heritage blue, which this color, if you remember, was available on the FJ Cruiser, one of the last model years that Toyota sold it almost a decade ago. Now you can see the square shape profile here reminds you a lot of the GX, because remember, this is kind of going to share a platform. It's built on the TNGA F architecture. And then looking at the rear of this vehicle, I also think it looks really good here. I love the style of the full LED taillights with this kind of LED square rectangular design. It has the iForce Max badge back here, because remember, this only comes standard as a hybrid vehicle here in the US. You also have this bumper down here, which is unpainted. It's going to, again, give you the capability that you need, the ruggedness to take it off-road. It also comes, it looks like, with a full-size matching spare. So if you guys do take this vehicle off-road, you're gonna want a full-size matching spare and whatnot. And then this vehicle here, behind this, you should be able to find the tow hitch, which I mentioned earlier. This vehicle will tow a maximum of 6,000 pounds. Now, opening up the cargo area, we don't have final figures just yet of the cargo area, but when you look back here, I'm noticing quite a few things. First of all, the floor is kind of raised up. Now, this vehicle is not available with a third row here in the US market. However, in other markets, I hear they will offer a third row. And it almost looks like there should be a third row, because there's cup holders back here and there's also USB-C charging ports. But again, here in the US market, we're not going to get the third row feature. But in terms of cargo space, the square shape allows for a lot of room back here, which I would probably say it's going to be around the mid 40 cubic feet of storage space, fold it down possibly into the 80s. But if you guys are thinking, the smaller Land Cruiser is going to make it less practical, as you can see, the boxy shape definitely makes this one of the most spacious cargo areas you're going to find in the segment. So one of the interesting things about the all-new Land Cruiser is Toyota is actually going to offer this vehicle with two distinctive front fascias depending on the trim configuration. Now this one here that we've switched to is the Land Cruiser 1958. Now if you guys are a Land Cruiser enthusiast, you'd know that 1958 is the first model year in America of the Land Cruiser, and this is going to be known as the base trim. And as you can see, it's got round headlights. It's got the heritage-inspired round full LED headlights. This is basically how you do retro modern done right, because you can see the LED halo ring around the headlight looks really distinctive. You have an LED low and high beam, you have an LED turn signal, and then you still get LED fog lights. Now I also want to mention the yellow fogs on the Land Cruiser mid-trim actually are color changing. So if you don't like the yellow, you can change it out to a different color. Of course, you still have the Heritage logo grille here, although some of the gloss black elements have changed to a flat black design. But overall, let me know in the comment section below if you guys prefer the rectangular headlights or the circular headlights. Me personally, I like the circular headlights, and if you guys want basically the higher equipment content of the mid-trim with this front fascia, the first edition, which Toyota is only going to be building 5,000 of them, is going to have basically the round headlight front fascia. Now moving around the side profile, you can see obviously, it still has the same boxy look. The two vehicles are the same size dimensionally, but this model here you can see has a slightly different wheel. This is still an 18-inch wheel wrapped in a 245 by 70 R18 tire. These are a Dunlop Grand Trek tire, so this is more of a street-oriented tire. Ground clearance is going to stay the same at 8.7 inches, and you can see the fender flares on this model also are not unpainted. You have a black painted or a black unpainted side mirror over here with still an integrated turn signal, which is nice. But you can see this model here lacks a sunroof, and it also lacks the roof rails along with the two-tone roof. So you can see the monotone color certainly looks interesting. And then I believe this color is either called meteorite shower or trail dust. I can't exactly tell. There are 5 different colors available on the all-new Land Cruiser. Now moving at the rear of the vehicle, I just want to show a couple of differences. You can see the taillights are still full LED, so even the base version is going to have LEDs. You can see it has an LED turn signal look. And then the rear tailgate set is actually a two-piece design. So if I push this button here, you can see the glass piece flips open, so you can kind of access the cargo back here if you don't want to open up the entire tailgate. But if you want to open up the full tailgate, this model here, as you can see, doesn't have a power liftgate, which the middle trim did have. And then looking at the cargo space here, you can see the raised floor is still apparent here. I believe this is where the 1.87 kilowatt hour battery pack lives. You can see underneath these panels, you do have a little bit of storage over here, and then it almost looks like it has a third row, right? However, pull this strap here, you can see no third row. Instead, it just gives you the storage there for the tools to replace your spare tire. But you can see it's got the cup holders. It's missing the USB-C charging ports that was on the higher trim. And then you can see there's also a power outlet back here, which I think the other one had as well. But overall, it still has really good amount of cargo space. But the sad reality is if you guys want a third row, you're obviously going to want that. Now underneath here, you can see it still has a full-size matching spare tire with an alloy wheel. And then this right here is a cover for the tow hitch. This will still tow a maximum of 6,000 pounds. So now that we've talked about the gorgeous exterior styling of the new Land Cruiser, let me go ahead and hop inside and show you guys the interior. Now I'm going to start off in the mid-level trim Land Cruiser. We're going to switch into the 1958 and show you guys what a baser version looks like. But once I hop inside, it's got that high step-in height and it also has a really solid sounding thunk. But this is the model that I suspect most people are probably going to go with. It's going to include some upgrades in the interior. First of all, these are the upgraded Soft-Tech seats. I love the brown color of these seats. These seats are also heated and ventilated. Technically, Toyota will offer a premium package, I believe, on the lower trim where you can get these heated and ventilated seats with the Soft-Tech materials. You also have a 10-way power adjustment for the driver along with a 2-person memory. And the seats themselves, they feel really comfortable, soft, supportive. Toyota does a really good job on the seats. But once you get inside the interior, you can see this dash layout is very familiar to those of you who have been in other Toyota products, but you can see Toyota has added a couple of heritage styling themes here. The first thing that's going to stick out right away is the steering wheel. You can see the airbag cover has the heritage Toyota logo there as opposed to the actual emblem. I like how it kind of spells out Toyota over there. This is also a very early pre-production car, so some things you see in here may change, but you can see all of them come standard with this fully digital 12-inch display. And then if you guys go for the baser version, which I'll show you later on, you'll have a smaller 8-inch display, but this is the 12.3-inch display. Of course, all of them are going to use the latest Toyota audio multimedia interface, so you'll have wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, you'll have over-the-air updates. This is a wonderful system, and it looks good in here. It's nicely integrated into the dash. However, if you guys remember the GX550, which shares a platform that has a larger 14-inch screen. Now, in terms of the materials, there are actually some really high-quality materials. First of all, the door panel here has a soft-touch injection molded plastic, nice padded area here where you'd rest your elbow. The windows controls are one touch for all four, which is nice. They feel really high quality and tactile. The dashboard, you can see, has a wonderful soft touch injection molded plastic material here. I also like this kind of interesting textured material here where it adds a little bit of color. The round air vents look good. You also have these interesting adjustments for the center vents. You can see over here your dual zone climate control with your heated and ventilated seats, which is definitely a nice touch. Down here on the center console, you can see you have a wireless phone charging pad, a traditional shifter for the 8-speed auto, which I love. And then this model here also comes with a front axle disconnect feature, which is again going to be included when you guys go for the higher trims. You have your full-time 4-wheel drive switch here included, which is nice because if you look at the Sequoia and the Tundra, you actually have a part-time 4-wheel drive system. You can see there's also a locking center diff, a locking rear diff, stability control off switch. This center console I think is a nice size. I also like how they put these kind of knee pads right here for those of you who have longer legs. Toyota also still saw fit to give you a volume knob, which is nice. The steering wheel has a power tilt telescoping feature, although it looks like this model here also has a heads-up display. Again, that's probably included on the higher trims. You can also see here there's a digital camera, rear view mirror, which is definitely a nice touch, especially for a sport utility vehicle. And then over here on the center console, you can see it's nice and padded. Open this up, it reveals a good amount of storage. No USB outlets in here. They're actually going to be found over here on the center stack. There's 3 USB-C charging ports along with your panoramic view 360 camera. This display, as you can see, is pretty similar to all the other Toyotas. I don't really love the panoramic scan view there. I think other manufacturers do a better job of giving you a more useful view. But again, for a vehicle that was their flagship vehicle, the Sequoia technically is now their flagship. It certainly has some nice touches. The glove compartment, you can see, is also a pretty good size. This is damped but not aluminum felt. You can see it kind of goes pretty deep, but it's not a bin style. But overall, in terms of the interior, for a mid-level trim, this definitely has all the tech that you want. It has a good commanding view of the road, great space. Above me, you can see here, the sunroof also lets in a nice amount of light. However, if you guys are looking for a panoramic sunroof, it doesn't offer that. Toyota says that the base version will have a sunroof, but then you can just get the standard sunroof. And then this model here also has a 14-speaker JBL sound. That is optional. A 10-speaker Toyota premium sound is going to be standard. I haven't had a chance to hear it yet, but Toyota's audio system tends to be more on the average to slightly above average size. So again, overall, this definitely gives you that commanding view of the road. Like a Land Cruiser, it has really great materials, especially the build quality, considering this is an early pre-production car. But let's go ahead and hop into the 1958 model so I can show you guys the differences with the base version. So now we've switched to the interior of the base trim. This is known as the Land Cruiser 1958. And as you can see, it looks pretty similar to the middle trim. However, the one thing I want to point out, I freaking love these seats. These are the cloth seats that remind me a lot of Toyota vehicles from the 90s. These seats are still heated. However, they have downgraded you to a manual adjustable seat. So now I have basically a 6-way manual adjustable seat over here, but it's nice that Toyota still gives you the heated seat function. But again, I believe there will be a premium package that will come in where you can get the soft tech seats with the power and the heated and cooled adjustments. Now, even though this is a base trim, you can see the steering wheel still has a leather wrapped wheel, so you don't have to deal with a cheap feeling urethane style wheel. However, the power adjustments have gone away to now a manual tilt telescoping, which is fine. The door panel materials here also switched to a hard touch plastic. So in the higher trim, you'll have a soft touch material. This is a little bit not quite as nice. And then over here for the armrest, this is kind of a shame. This is also switched to a hard touch plastic, which is not ideal, but again, Toyota had to kind of save some money in certain places. You can see the dashboard material also again switched to a hard touch for this area. However, this area is still padded, which is nice. However, the center screen here, the screens, they still pretty much look the same, but you have a smaller 8-inch display over here, which this is a very early pre-production model, so ignore the fact that the screens are kind of glitching as you see. This still includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can see there's still a volume knob, which is nice. And then I mentioned earlier a fully digital center display or instrument panel. That's incorrect. Obviously, this has a smaller, it looks like 8-inch or 7-inch display that is partially half digital or partially digital with some analog style gauges for the temperature and for the fuel. This still looks really nice. I mean, for a base version, Toyota still included a lot of things. Obviously, you still have your automatic climate control, which is dual zone function. You have a heated windshield, your heated seats. Like I said, you still have 3 USB-C charging ports. They took away the wireless phone charging pad. As you can see here, it's just kind of empty, but you can see your drive mode selector is here where you can adjust the drive mode between a sport, a normal, and an eco setting. You can also put the transmission into a second gear. You lock it in that, and there's also downhill assist control. Your full-time 4-wheel drive switch is here, and you still get the locking center and locking rear diff. So obviously, as an off-road vehicle with the off-road tech this car is going to have, even the base cruiser includes that. This right here could be softer. I have to say it was much more padded in the base version. Then you can see over here, open this up, it's still a pretty deep center console, and then here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see it's the typical Toyota fob, kind of basic in its buttons, but remember there's no power liftgate in this feature, and if you have access to your smartphone with the Toyota Connected app, if this is your vehicle, you should be able to remotely access the vehicle as well. Now without the sunroof, you can see massive amounts of headroom, so if you guys don't want a sunroof, you need that extra head clearance, this is obviously the trim level you're going to want. But overall, as you can see, for a base version, Toyota really didn't skimp too much here, and it's going to again give you some of the classic features, the heritage features that's going to remind you a lot of the old Land Cruiser that you're probably going to be trading in. Now moving on to the back seat of the new Land Cruiser, sadly I don't have final figures just yet in terms of the legroom, but like I said earlier, this model in the US will not come with a third row of seats, which allowed Toyota to kind of give us a little bit of versatility. So you can see the seats obviously fold down and they also flip up, which is kind of funny because this would flip up so you could access the third row, but it's not available here in the US. But what's also nice is you can also recline this seat a pretty good amount. So a lot of versatility in this second row seat. It's going to give people, again, a reason to choose this as a family car. Now hopping inside, you can see once I get back here, this is probably where I'd have the seat to drive. Let me get in and shut the door. You know, for somebody my height, I'm 5'7". I probably wouldn't have the seat quite as reclined as this. There's actually a pretty good amount of space. If I had to guess the legroom, I'd probably say maybe around 37, 38 inches of legroom. It's a pretty good amount. There is a hump here that intrudes on the middle passenger. Foot space underneath the front seat is fine for me, although I think my editor Rob said it seemed a little more cramped for him. He's over 6 feet tall. In terms of the headroom space, you can see for me it's pretty good. This sunroof does take up some headroom space, but it's nice how it kind of carves out back here to give you a little more headroom space. The door panels are still soft touch material back here, so it's nice to see Toyota didn't skimp out, even though this is, again, a very early pre-production car. It's padded right here where you'd rest your elbows, and then over here on the center console you can see you have your own set of climate controls. It's got 3-zone climate control. However, I'm not seeing something for heated rear seats. That could be available later on, but for now it looks like this model, the mid-trim, doesn't have it. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, you have a 12-volt power outlet, although no actual household power outlet back here, which would have been nice. You have 2 storage cubbies, and then if you fold this down here, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders. So overall, if you guys want to, sell this vehicle as a family car, if you own the old one, this should have pretty similar room. But however, again, if you want that third row of seating, you may have to look at something else in the Toyota portfolio. So with 65 years of heritage under its belt, it would be foolish for Toyota to abandon the Land Cruiser name. And after a 3-year hiatus, I have to say, seeing the all-new 2024 model in the sheet metal, Toyota did a lot of things here to upgrade this vehicle. Obviously, it's going to have the off-road capability that the Land Cruiser name is known for. I love the exterior styling. I mean, starting off with the Lexus GX 550 as the basis, the TNGA-F architecture was a great place to start. What confuses me, however, about the new Land Cruiser is its positioning in the lineup, because this vehicle is, like I said, smaller and narrower versus the previous generation. The previous generation was the flagship SUV for Toyota. However, that distinction still belongs to the all-new Sequoia. So this model here, the way it is, the way it looks, the specs of the vehicle remind me a lot about the Toyota 4Runner. Now, obviously, Toyota is not willing to talk about the next generation 4Runner here at this program. We should be hearing more about that vehicle toward the end of this year. But it's going to be interesting to see where Toyota is going to position the 4Runner when this all-new Land Cruiser comes out, with the all-new 4Runner, of course, coming in at some point as well, because Toyota seems to have made this car smaller and more affordable it certainly is, because if you guys want to get your hands on this vehicle, it will be going on sale in the spring of next year as a 2024 model year, and Toyota says this new version here for this base model is going to start in the $50,000 range. That's right, you heard me correctly. The old Land Cruiser was around $88,000. This gets nearly a 50% discount for its base price. So mid $50,000 for this, again, reminds me a lot of the next generation 4Runner. So it's gonna be interesting to see where Toyota puts that vehicle. Now, I suspect that other version that we showed you guys is probably around $10,000 to $15,000 more. The first edition, which Toyota is only gonna be building around 5,000 of those next year, I'm gonna suspect is gonna come in around $70,000 to $75,000. Obviously, that's a lot of money, but compared to the old Land Cruiser, again, which was 90 grand almost, this is going to be a significant discount. So it's gonna be a surprising an interesting addition to the lineup. Toyota is again really updating all their vehicles. Their trucks were in dire need of an update. And with this 2024 Land Cruiser, it is definitely the start of a new SUV era for Toyota. So I'll be really excited to drive this vehicle. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below of the new Land Cruiser. Do you think this is going to replace the 4Runner, or do you think there's room for both vehicles in Toyota's North American lineup? But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Rob, who is always working so hard behind the camera and doing all the editing on these events. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you all in the next video.